This OTA has a lot of changes I think are entirely warranted. However, a few of them bring about a little bit of a concerning dynamic into Marvel Snap. Second Dinner is removing a point of power from Sunspot, and the reason being is because the end of turn strategy has gotten too many toys, and its win rate is just kind of going upwards. Now, it's not a problem that they say that they could fix by, nerfing the Fantastic card, nerfing Mr. Fantastic First Steps. They don't really mention those as a problematic card. However, Sunspot is. And one of the points that they do mention in this OTA is the fact that he is too good with Invisible Woman First Steps. Being able to skip one full turn and getting double triggers on him, getting a massive amount of power. I understand if he wasn't built for it. I'm not going to argue with that. However, why is this card the problem and nothing else? I don't get that. This feels like a stranger hit to me. Again, it seems like it's purely just because, hey, he wasn't balanced to be able to trigger twice on the same turn and get all that ramping out of energy. Okay, but again, I don't get why this is the problematic card here. It feels like there are many other cards that are overperforming, being more utilized and like that. And we've seen Second Dinner say in the past where hey, if a card fits into many archetypes, we don't really want to nerf it. And we've also not seen them say, but kind of seen them say, hey, we don't really want to nerf cards that are actively in the season pass. So Fantastic Card and Mr. Fantastic, you're safe for this OTA at least, but I have a feeling that as we move into the next couple of weeks, we're going to be seeing some changes coming to them soon. But Sunspot losing a point of power, legitimately, it's not going to matter in the long run. I don't believe so, especially considering the what power it can put down. It's just unfortunate that the second that High Evolutionary gets this powerful feeling, the second it finally feels like it's a deck that you can finally use, still can't use half the cards in it because, the thing still exists and Shocker and 19 other cards that are just kind of not good. But this end of turn strategy now does a little bit more for him. And yeah, so, this is one that I'm going to say, I don't love this change. I get it. Just saying hey, double up with Invisible Woman, not what we wanted to do. However, I don't feel like it was that bad, but there is a lot of that in the meta right now. So I can say this is probably at least a fair one, even if I don't like it. This Gwenpool change makes a lot of sense. They've said that they wanted to get these top of the tier 4-cost cards, bring them down in power level. So her going from a 4-6 to a 4-5, it makes a lot of sense. She has been consistently in the top of the charts, and they said straight up, hey, long-term players, you're not going to be surprised. When they released her at a 4-6 and just said straight up, hey, a 4-6 that actually doubles up and gives you a 4-12 of value, we're chill with this. This is fine. And part of the reason why they're saying that they're going to nerf this is because they don't want this to be just a good card in a tech card deck, but they still want her to be fun for these brood style of decks as one of the cards I specifically mentioned. I like the stuff with Mysterio as well. I think that this is probably another fair change. Again, I think that she is a really fun card. But as a 4-6 that says +2, 3 additional times to cards in your hand, it was a bit much. And at the time I said, hey, you know what? We've got this. It's what they said is balanced. I'm glad that they've taken a step back and they're saying, you know what? These 4-cost cards are a little bit too good. And they've taken that. They're pulling them back and they're trying to make the 4-cost slot at least a little bit more competitive. And I like that. But as a result of these 4-cost cards becoming worse, we're seeing the 2-cost slot really, really become, I think, just overpopulated. There's so many other 2-cost cards that are just really good, really powerful because of these 4-cost cards kind of stepping back. And these rampers that we're now seeing with Mr. Fantastic First Steps being able to consistently add additional power to your hand, not to mention Surge, and not even talk about the cards that actually ramp on their own, like just a simple Thena. All these cards are really powerful, really good, and we're going to see, I'm guessing in the future, probably some sort of change to this 2-cost slot. However, we're not seeing anything else of that today. But this Gwenpool change, at the very minimum, it makes sense. They just want to make sure that this archetype that uses these tech cards and just a couple of really high static cards like Gwenpool, you can't just do that. You want to be able to make sure you can still use it with those decks that actually benefit off of Gwenpool's ability, but not just tech cards. So in the end, yeah, this makes sense. I just It is what it is. Now, Dormammu's the next up in this list, and I'm not gonna lie, this one makes a lot of sense, actually. And you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, well then, why is this the yellow, right? Why are we having yellow here? It's not just a red big number change because he lost a point of power. Was Dormammu really that good? The answer is he really was not a good card. People weren't playing him a lot. So they're making two changes to him. First of all, he does lose his point of power, but he loses a point of power, but then the skill that he has, his third step of the summoning ritual, goes to a 2 cost. So he loses 1 point of power, but his third skill becomes cheaper. This is a really big deal. I like this a lot. And this is one thing that they've realized. I think especially with skills. When they ask players to engage in quests, is what they're calling it, and with these cards, right? You have Ancient One, you have Captain Carter, you have Summon Ritual. Each of these quests vary indifferently. Captain Carter says, hey, put me in the front, put cards behind me. Ancient One says, play me, but then play what I give you. And Dormammu literally says, hey, this is actually a quest here. Do this. They said, this is too much. It's not working, and we've realized that. And they've taken some time. They wanted to make sure everything was going to be careful with it, because also this is a really cool card. They like what they're doing here. They like Dormammu as an idea. They just don't want it to be a card that you can't play. They want you to at least feel like you can get some value out of it. And I think one of the biggest things that I have felt and I've seen when, at least during Dormammu's week, was people struggled very heavily so to actually get value in terms of getting all of their cards down on the final turn and making sure they can win 2 lanes. That 2 lanes much more than value thing, but I just speak words and sometimes they're wrong. But trying to win 2 lanes oftentimes is actually really difficult with Dormammu. Typically, you do play this skill on the final turn of the game, but then if you're doing that, then how are you getting into another lane with it being a 3 cost? So they're trying to say, hey, if it goes to a 2 cost, it's actually a little bit easier for you to do it. It is 2/3 cheap. It is, what is it? It's 2/3 of the cost from before. And it hopefully is going to be a little bit easier. They say they want you to be able to weave them all into your curve a little bit more and generate fuel to both, for one, get Dormammu into play, and for 2, to contest another location. Now, I think it's a good change. I think this is a solid change to Dormammu in general. However, this one, and we're going to see a few other cards get changed like this, because while I will say this is most likely a buff, it is a rework a little bit because they're taking his power down, but they're also giving his cards more cost. This doesn't make me feel like this is going to be a really meaningful and impactful change due to a data mine card, Stardust. Stardust is data mined currently with a force that says ongoing. Cards can only be added to locations by playing or moving them. Now, this is for both you and your opponent, the way Stardust works, which means Dormammu just doesn't work. Destroy doesn't work. A lot of other cards that aren't really great just don't work. And I understand wanting to put a card like that because Hela is annoying. And we asked for that in the past, where, hey, give me this card that's going to counter Hela. Sure. But also, they're making this buff to Dormammu, and I'm willing to bet he will probably be at least okay for about 5 days. I'm going to give it 5 days before Stardust comes out. Again, data mine, subject to change, yada, yada, yada. 5 days. Then Stardust is data mined to release. And I'm pretty sure Dormammu goes straight into the trash can. And I really, really dislike that. I hope he's fun. I hope Dormammu is a really fun card. I hope this does a good change, at least for these 5 days. This feels like it's going to be a meaningful and impactful change. And we're probably going to have to see even more stuff when those 5 days pass, when Stardust actually enters the game. See if it's going to make a big difference. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm overreacting here. And let's hope I really honestly hope I am. But if I'm not, then it doesn't really matter what they do to Dormammu here. So, as much as I do like this change, I'm really concerned this is a very, it won't do anything change. Now, this one's funny. Second Dinner said, and I quote, "The goal of our last change was to, and in a bizarre twist, get players to actually spend energy and put her onto the board." And it didn't work. Because also, if you just got her on turn 1, you couldn't play her. You have a, I believe, 1/3 chance to just, in your games, just lose her. So there's no point in using her anywhere other than Hela. And they don't really like that. They said that, given the unreliable nature of when she is drawn, and when you'll actually be able to spend energy on her, she still remains a card that you kind of just use with Hela. So they're taking a big shot here. And this is a lower series card, which I think is really cool. With Black Cat getting to this 1-5 stat line, this is just a straight up good card. Like, there's nothing bad really about this in general. I love what this can do, and this is one that I think the Moon Girl She-Hulk deck is gonna love. It's a Moon Girl She-Hulk deck where you can use Sunspot, which did take a point of power hit, but you can also just skip your turn, get a bunch of Sunspot power, and then you've got Black Cat to clear up your hand. You throw also Makari on the board, then you put a bunch of 1 costs because you activated Black Swan, and that's an amazing amount of power. And this card is most likely going to be really solid in decks like that. I don't know how much more you'll be able to use her outside of it, because again, is the fact that you lose her as the second you don't play her enough to matter? That she is now a premium stat, which typically is just a big debuff. It says like, hey, I'm going to be your opponent's ally with Titania. Or it's going to say, hey, I'm going to lose you the game with Martyr. Or it says, hey, you have to commit everything into this lane for me to be 5 power with an Ant-Man. Now this just says, hey, I get rid of myself if you don't play me. Is that equal? Part of me says yes, but I'm interested to see how that actually occurs as time goes on. This is going to be a spicy change. I'm excited to see where Black Cat goes. And this is one of the only few changes in this OTA that I'm like, okay, I kind of like what you're doing here. But there's still a good chunk of stuff where I'm like, okay, this is where we are. We're at a world where a 2/4 Invisible Woman is apparently the new standard. And this is something I'm not a fan of, straight up. Not only are we getting a 2/4 Invisible Woman, we're also getting a 2/4 Domino. Both of them are getting this buff. And Stagnator says straight up, we've largely held the line that 2/3 is the maximum power for a 2 cost that does not have an explicit drawback. That said, given the relative strength of 2 cost cards in the game, seems fair to argue that Invisible Woman and Domino's text boxes are difficult to play with, due to more planning or deck building versus cards that are just more plug and play. And I don't love this, because this, as we're talking about 2 costs being really good, this says 2 different things to me. It says, one, those 2 costs that are really good, they're fine. Surge, Mr. Fantastic, Domino, and Invisible Woman, we want more of these cards. Part of me will say, okay, well then, you should bring those other cards down in power. Bring those other cards down. But, and this is unfortunately where I started thinking, I'm like, but we lived in a world where for months and months, we didn't have those cards. We didn't have a Merlin. We didn't have a Surge. We didn't have an Iron Patriot. And we still weren't playing Domino. We still let me know which way to say it. We still weren't using either of these cards. And so, on one hand, I'm like, okay, this is a bad change. I dislike this. But on the other hand, I'm like, I mean, if we're not using them before, why would we use them? This just makes sense. At least we can probably use them now. So, this does technically make sense. This will probably introduce more playability for Invisible Woman and Domino. I think just the biggest thing of just power creep, where it says, hey, the cards just need to get better. And Invisible Woman, I think, is the weirder one of the two. I can argue Domino's probably, honestly, as a 2/4, could probably make sense. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of, for what it's worth, Invisible Woman most likely. And I think the biggest thing we're going to be seeing is something akin to what we have in Grand Arena, right? With these Ajax Invisible Woman build. She most likely will be pretty good in builds like that, and I think we're going to be seeing some more of her coming up. I'm a sucker and also like to try some Cerebro stuff, and I feel like there's a chance you may want to use her there. Either way, I'm not the biggest fan of Invisible Woman for this, because I still think you can get some benefits out of it. But again, with cards like Eliath and other tech cards that we do have coming soon, this one probably does make a bit of sense. However, what is it? Domino is the one that I could say, like, yeah, this one just is worse. This card's not been good. We've had Domino for a while, and we even had a point where when Wiccan came into the game, we're like, oh, sick. We can use Domino. We can use Quicksilver. And Quicksilver stayed. But, and I don't know the math, and I'm not going to pretend to know the math, but apparently pro players did the math, and they said, Domino, not worth it. Quicksilver is. I don't get the math. I'm not going to pretend to understand the math. But maybe it's something akin to all the 2-cost cards that we have being good. But now this is going to come to a question like, okay, so hear me out, and I hate this. You've put Quicksilver and Domino in the deck, and then you've got tech cards. That's what I expect. I expect to see a deck fairly soon after this OTA where they just put the Quicksilver and Domino in there, and then they use a lot of tech cards, and they say, oh yeah, I'm using Domino and Quicksilver, because guess what? I can get my Wicking Curve now. I've got 2 of my turns set up. And if the amount of 3-cost tech cards that we have in the game, I'll just use any of those on turn 3, then turn 4 is going to be a pretty solid Wiccan game. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. These two just make me scared for power creep, make me scared for what we're going to be seeing in terms of the Marvel Snap in the future. I just don't think that the 4th point of power makes me feel happy, even if, again, I will probably argue this is probably correct. Again, I just really dislike this one. As much as I don't like the previous 2 changes, there's a good chance the 4th point of power is very warranted. But Mobius? Mobius needs to get a 4th point of power? Why is this guy getting better? Why do we need Mobius at a 3/4? Second says straight up, people are using cost reduction, and it's a normal part of Snap. Now, when they say normal part of Snap, it is now a normal part of Snap. There was a very long period of time in which Mobius wasn't. Cost reduction wasn't. And Mobius wasn't needed as much. There were a few cards that used cost reduction, not as many. But as the prominence of these cost reduction cards are on the rise, as well as Second are making more of them, they want to make sure there is some counterplay to them. He already existed. I just don't want to have to be... I don't want a tech card to be the option for it. I just don't like Mobius. Mobius is very much a sandcastle kicker. But they said that they want players to have access to a tool that will manage and counter some of these cost reduction cards a little bit more in terms of being able to plan out what those cost reduction decks that are using Surge, that are using Mr. Fantastic First Steps, turn by turn, and just be able to throw Mobius on the board. Now, I am not mad at Mobius because I think his mustache looks better than mine. That is not why I'm mad at him. Please stop saying that. It is not true. Not true. Anyway. I just don't think he's a fun card. It's an access to a tech card, and I don't believe tech cards should become more valuable. I don't believe tech cards should be in more places. I don't think more tech cards are probably a good thing, but as I'm saying that, we do exist in a metagame right now that is completely filled with all of these cost reducers, and that's probably not the best thing. And so this is a legitimate, it does make sense that they want to bring this card into the limelight. Maybe put a point of power on him and say like, hey, look, don't forget about this guy. Did y'all forget about him? And maybe this doesn't actually make a difference in his strength, but it just reminds people about this card. Kind of similar to what people were doing when they buffed Scorpion, when they were buffing some of these other cards in the past that said, hey, they don't need the power, but you forgot about this guy. Remember when Scar was everywhere and Surtur, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, we can't counter this. Scorpion exists. Why is no one using him? They literally said that in the OTA notes, and this feels something akin to that. And it will probably occur. This will be a pretty decent card, but I'm just also scared that this is just going to be another big tech deck, right? Like, these tech card decks are using a lot of these cost reductors. And that's because, and then they're going to be like, okay, hey, we would like to put a step back and make sure it doesn't occur anymore. Now they're just going to be able to use him as well, though. So it just feels like this is going to be, they're fixing an issue, but then this issue is just going to be it's going to be another good tool for the problem. I don't know. This is another one that I'm like, yeah, I get your point. I get your point, Second. I get it. Don't love it, but I get it. I think out of every single change in this OTA, Agony going to a 1/3 is the most surprising piece in the entire thing. This is not a card I would have expected to get some additional power. Now, straight up, I'm not complaining. I like Agony as a card. I think she's really cool. I think it's a really fun card. But it's just a 1/3 now. And this is the first 1/3 that we have in Marvel Snap with just no downside. There's no detriment to her now. What? So if I play a Blade, I lose a card in my hand. If I play Zero, I lose the abilities of my next card. If I play Sauron, I lose all ongoing abilities in my hand or deck. And Agony, what's your debuff? You get +3 on the next card. This is one that's like, okay, yeah, I love this fun card getting more love. Fun is good. And I know I'm saying the fun word many times, the F word, sorry. And that's cool. I like it. And they even say, Agony's a card we think is fun, and it's been underplayed. We just wanted, but they said no one's using her. Numbers have been tamed. Let's take a swing with her. Now, this is a swing for the fences, I think, because the cheaper a card is, the more each point of power matters. So her being a baseline 1/3 now is a fairly big deal. I don't know how much I love this change overall because of that aspect in particular. However, I like Agony as a card. So if you're telling me, hey, this card you like, it's now better, cool. But also, I'm a sucker for cards that are bad. So I feel like this 1/3 is just going to be a bit good. And it also makes me scared. If we're just going to put a card that is 1/3 and that's it, what does that mean for the future of just what we're getting in Marvel Snap? Does this mean like a 1/3 with just a benefit is a real potential card in the future? I hope not, but that's what this makes me scared of. And I know it's a slippery slope fallacy that I will argue against many a times, but I'm still scared of it. I don't like the fact that this is now a baseline, but Agony's fun. All right, let's play some more Agony. This is the card I think that makes no difference whatsoever. And I'm going to say that, and you're going to hear the next one, and then you're going to go back in your head and you say, wait, Dance, and you said Blink going from a 5/7 to a 5/8 was the change that will make literally no difference, when this next one literally isn't a difference? I stand by it. And the reason being, because for one, Blink isn't a great card. It's a ramping card, kind of. But also, I talked about the offender earlier, the card that I'm really not a fan of, Stardust. And Stardust just turns off Blink. I don't know. There's a card coming out literally in 5 days that just undoes everything Blink wants to do. Turns off Blink. It's not a fun card. So Blink is going to be getting additional point of power. I think that's cool. They even said, for what it's worth, that buffing, they wanted to potentially buff both Lockjaw and Blink because both are underperforming. But because Lockjaw changed more recently, they're taking the opportunity with Blink, as well as they wanted to buff up more 5-cost cards. I get both those things. And so Second Enter has, in this OTA, said that they wanted to buff up more of these 5-cost cards, more 2-cost cards that are worse. These cards that, and I know I'm saying 2-cost cards, there's plenty of good 2-cost cards, I know this, but they're all saying they want to bring up some of the worst 2-cost cards. Sure. It just feels like there's a really careful thing that's kind of, the scales are getting tilted a little bit in terms of what's going to be okay, what's not. And I think they could straight up make her a 5/10, and because of Stardust, she won't make a difference. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh God, y'all, I would love to be wrong about this one. I would be so happy if, when Stardust comes out, this card's amazing. Still. But I don't see it. I just don't see it as a potential future. So I'm very scared about the next upcoming week of Marvel Snap. And again, that's not even because of the OTA. I think the OTA has a lot of really cool cards, really interesting cards, but it really feels like they're putting a bandage on. They're giving it an extra point of health when they're about to bring out a machine gun, a machete to it. And I really am not a fan of that. So on one hand, cool stuff. On the other hand, this isn't going to make a difference. And this isn't actually any difference. Apparently Evolved Thing, like with High Evo, when you put High Evo in the deck with the Thing, he was still a base 6 power. Y'all, this card was out for 2 weeks. I didn't hear anyone mention this. Maybe someone did. Maybe you're that one person. Let me know down below if you were. But like, I heard no one mention this card not working with High Evolutionary. And I think that's just funny. But I stand by Blink being less of a change than this. Mole Man's been out, by the way, for, let me check my calendar, a week, and he's already got a buff. Mole Man's going to a 3/4, and this is actually both in his Grand Arena and in the main game. This was a specification that they did try to make because He is it's technically a different card if you look into the game files, the champion version versus versus the actual main card. So it's weird stuff there. Don't question it. I don't understand it, but here we are. Anyway, Mole Man gets an additional point of power, and I like this change. Straight up. I think Mole Man's a cool card. He's really interesting. I've actually been playing a good chunk with him. He's fun. I think he's one of my personal favorite decks right now inside of Grand Arena. And I think for what it's worth, actually, he has currently the worst skill in Grand Arena. And I'm going to say that. I wish it wasn't true, but I do believe he currently does have the absolute worst skill in Grand Arena. But he's still a really fun card, so I like to see this extra point of power. We'll see if this matters more. Mad Thinker, dodging it, though. I feel like no one's playing Mad Thinker. And I guess that's fine in comparison to Mole Man. I don't get the logic here fully. Maybe Mad Thinker's just waiting for a great card. But it doesn't really seem great either. So we'll see what happens here. Mole Man existing. I like that bit. But like I said, this is actually happening in the main game and in Grand Arena. And these are the end of the actual card changes. The end of all the other OTA balancing for the main game. But there's a lot of changes that they're doing to Grand Arena. And we have Mole Man on screen. Let's talk about his deck. Or more specifically, his skill. Now, his deck is undergoing some changes. We'll go over that in a second here. But first, I want to talk about the Subterranean Summons. Now, I believe it's going to go to a 1 cost. It was previously at a 2 cost skill. And no longer will it just do, +2 power or a -1 cost. It'll actually give +3 or -1, which I think is a really big buff. And this is a card that only exists in Grand Arena. This is a really big change. I think that he has, as of now, had the worst skill. But this change is actually kind of insane. This is a really big change, and I think it's going to matter a lot. I'm excited for this one. It just means that hopefully it's going to be easier to play. The 1 cost ability of it, it does make it so I think Quinjet now sucks in that deck a little bit more so than before, but it still is really cool. I like this card in general. It's going to be fun. I'm excited for this bit, but that's not the only skill in Grand Arena actually getting a change. Herbie, I think, is the card that everyone's been using for sweat in this game, to sweat in the game mode, because you can double up Herbie potentially twice. And with it being at a 3 cost skill for helpful assistance, you could be spending 5 power or 5 energy, and then you get a 12 powered Herbie if you activate him on his own terms and double up his power. And also, you get +2 energy next turn, an additional rock, and 2 other power to other locations on the board. Yeah, Helpful Assistance was really good. It was a really powerful card. It was really cool, really fun, and I'm glad this exists, but I'm also really glad that it's a 4 cost. This card was a little bit too good before, and I'm glad they're taking a step back with it, and it'll hopefully feel a lot cleaner. But one of the things I think that's going to help a lot is just less tech cards in Marvel Snap. I've been asking for this for a while, and Grand Arena is going to be making a few changes just to do that for us. Less tech cards with 7 cards getting removed from Grand Arena's available deck building. Now, each of them have their own reason behind them, but let's go over all of them real fast. We've got Storm, Eliath, Cannonball, Juggernaut, Viper, Sarah, and Agatha Harkness all getting banned from Grand Arena. Now, there's a myriad of reasons for each of them that I don't have the full details on, but I'm going to speculate to each and every one of them. Storm, guess what? They banned Professor X because getting locations locked out isn't fun. Storm Legion was still a thing, so I'm pretty sure that that's getting banned because of that logic. However, going to Eliath, y'all, they made an Invisible Woman deck, but left Eliath unbanned. If you need more answers, there you go. Cannonball is getting banned most likely because of just being a problematic card and due to the fact that you get the extra energy and Mercury stopping your opponents early on with Cannonball being able to destroy whatever they try to do is really big and it matters a lot. So it makes sense they would try to hit both of those a little bit more so, not so much Mercury needing to actually take the point of power away, but Cannonball getting hit down. However, Juggernaut, y'all, I've just been saying for a bit, Juggernaut's not a fun card. I'd like to see Juggernaut lose a point of power. And the fact that he is, at least in this OTA video in some way, shape, or form, I kind of wish it was him getting hit in the real OTA, but he is taking he's taking a big point away inside of Grand Arena, the point being himself. I don't know. Juggernaut, no longer going to be available. You can't move people away from locations. We still do have Negasonic Teenage Warhead, though, but we lose Viper. Now, Viper is a funnier one, and you might think, why in the world are you removing Viper? And I'm willing to bet it's because of one reason. If you Viper over your Carnage champion, you can then play your Carnage's skill, Maximum Carnage, move Carnage to whatever location on your opponent's side of the board, and then he destroys all of their cards there. I don't have any actual evidence that this is the reason why they're removing him, but also, I'm pretty sure that's why that Viper's getting removed. Sarah, in Marvel Snap, if you can somehow play Sarah on turn 4 in a normal game, that's a snap condition. That's something you are easily going to win with. And if people are going to be doing it inside of Grand Arena, you can even get it done a turn earlier because you get the additional energy each and every turn. So a turn 3 Sarah is a legitimate strategy. It's a legitimately viable strategy. And so it makes sense they'd say, nah. We need to make sure that people are going to be a little bit more honest with their power. Now, we don't have Mobius, but we don't have Sarah either. So I guess it's kind of two ends of the coin, both getting taken down a little bit here. Agatha, listen, I appreciate you, honey. You do good work. You apparently you watched Franklin from the Fantastic Four's kid. You know, you watched him apparently when he was younger. You had a TV show. You were the antagonist in WandaVision. You did a lot of really cool things, and I appreciate you for that. Yeah, but you playing yourself on turn 2 in the Doctor Doom deck, a little bit too good. We're gonna have to take that a step back. I hadn't personally seen much of that myself, but that's most likely, if I had to harbor a guess, that's the reasoning why they decided to make that change to her. That's why they decided to bring her down. So these are the 7 cards that they're going to be removing, and I think every single one of them makes sense. I think it makes sense that they are going to be hitting these cards. I think all of them are just, they're good. They're good cards in general. I think they're going to be fine without them in the game mode, and I hope it's going to increase the amount of decks we're going to be wanting to play. However, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that Mole Man is kind of been pretty bad. And actually, if we talk about the pre-constructed decks, Mole Man and Doctor Doom's deck, they both have been really bad for a bit of time. And we actually have a change to both of them. Both of them are going to get some cards added to them. Let's talk about that real fast. Mole Man's current deck really hasn't been that great, and they're making some good changes to it. They're going to be removing Esme, Cuckoo, Isan, and Iron Patriot. They're removing 3 Series 5 cards. A little bit unfortunate for those players who would like to be able to introduce themselves into some new archetypes, but they are adding at least 2 Series 5 cards back into the deck, and also throwing in an early series card, because honestly, Blue Marvel is just a good card. Blue Marvel, Ancient One, and Surge are getting added to this list. I think all 3 of these are amazing changes. Not to mention the fact that his skill is now going to give that +3, and it's 1 cheaper. This deck just got miles better. I think it's been one of the worst ones for a second, and adding all of these additional cards into there is really good. Now, we still don't really have a tech, quote-unquote, card inside of this list, but with the amount of points you can put down on the board, I think there's a good chance you could still win here. Agent Coulson still potentially giving you a couple of extra tech cards is really nice. Reconstructed the deck list of my own deck building here. I really like this. I think this is going to be a really fun deck. I like the changes that they're doing here, so I'm excited to see how this actually lands as we are entering our 2nd week of Grand Arena. Hoping this means that some new players are going to be able to have some fun with Mole Man. Maybe it's a little bit more competitive. Maybe this gets some extra people interested in him, especially considering the fact that even though it doesn't show it over here, he is now going to be a 3/4. But we're also going to be seeing one more change to the Doctor Doom deck, pre-constructed version. Doctor Doom's pre-constructed deck, I think, has been just the actual worst one. The Mole Man one has been doing great, but the Doom one, I believe, has the lowest win rate by far out of all of the pre-constructed Grand Arena decks. So they said, we're going to make some big changes here, and they are cutting Jennifer Kale, Nocturne, Gore, and Astral Projection. I think all of those make sense, barring Gore. I think Gore was a fair one to leave in there. However, as they're removing, as they're going to be adding in Red Hulk over Gore, putting in Magneto in this list as well, also giving us White Tiger and Lockjaw for a little bit extra of those cycling abilities that Lockjaw and Blink can both offer. Blink, of course, is going to be a 5/8 as the time this OTA goes live. Overall, a really great change to the deck. I think this just adds a lot more cyclability to it. I still question whether or not it's going to be amazing, especially with the knowledge of the fact that it's, again, no tech cards. There's not really any benefits to these bits, and I don't want that to be a legitimate point that I'm going to bring up here, but it should be one, because tech card builds typically do better. And now we are going to be, like I said, seeing that change to Herbie, where his execute protocol now costs 4 instead of 3, so maybe it makes a big difference. Maybe the Doom tech card deck with Agatha, because you have Agatha as a banned card now, makes this pre-constructed deck a little bit more interesting, a little bit more viable. And I like the fact they are trying to make these decks viable, even against decks that do more tech cards. Now, I love building sandcastles rather than kicking them down, so I support this. I hope it does well. I'm a little bit concerned, but still solid stuff. That's a lot of stuff for today's OTA. There are so many different card changes, so many big changes to Grand Arena, which I think are really interesting. Focusing on the Grand Arena for a second. I love this. Every single thing that they're doing in Grand Arena feels like a very meaningful and impactful change. I think the only thing I probably would have done legitimately in addition is adding Negasonic Teenage Warhead as a card that you should probably ban. Otherwise, I think everything else here is really good. I think it's really solid stuff, and I like what they are doing here. There's a lot of really fun cards, a lot of really interesting things, and the fact they're going to be bringing some of these decks that are just a little bit worse, hopefully into the limelight, is going to be really nice here. I'm still shocked that Howard the Duck is in Human Torch's deck, but apparently that list is doing well enough that it doesn't matter. I stand by that one being an insane decision. Not as insane as Mobius now going to a 3-4, and us just having baseline 2-4s and 1-3s with not really a downside. Yep, here we are. Legitimately, I think this OTA is probably going to do some good things to the metagame. I really dislike some of the changes that they've made here, even if I can understand the logic behind them. I just think that I don't know, this feels like a point where a lot of these cards having a half point of power would be amazing, but that's not a thing that can exist. So, it is what it is. I like this stuff, and let me know if you do as well down below. Appreciate you watching to the end of this. It was a much longer one because it had a lot more stuff to cover, and I was just yapping a lot more because there's so much more stuff that I'm invested in, so much more stuff I'm interested in. Let me know if you enjoy these, and I'll see you around tomorrow. We're going to be doing a villainous video, and then I believe during the weekend we'll throw up another very fun Marvel Snap video. I'm excited for that one. A couple of really interesting decks have been coming by my way. Sorry, to preview stuff. I'll see you around. Peace.